Hi, I'm Troy McGuinness, and I want to introduce you to PromptOpsKit, my solution for managing the prompt hell that I was in my applications, where I had prompt files and prompt strings encoded all through my applications, model data and which model to use, and settings and tools and MCP servers spread out all over the place. Let me show you where I was. So my best practice was to at least put all of my prompts for LLMs in a single file, prompts.ts. And as you can sort of see, it gets rather long. And the prompts are a mix of text and then data, context data that was injected at runtime. And this is just the start. This isn't the system instructions. This isn't the tool definitions, the MCP servers. They're somewhere else. So what I wanted to do was be able to encapsulate all of the prompts and model settings and data injection requirements and validations in one file. And that's what I did with PromptOpsKit. So let me give you a demo of how it works. So I've started off here with just a plain old vanilla Next.js app. I've just created it. It's got nothing in it other than an environment config with my OpenAI key, and no, I will not show you. So the first thing we need to do is install the library. So we do an npm install PromptOpsKit. Now that's going to install the library. It's light. It has very two small dependencies to parse the front matter and so forth, but it's very small. Now once we install that, I want you to run one extra command. You can create a prompts folder yourself, or you can have us create it for you. npx PromptOpsKit init. And what it's going to do is it's going to create this prompts folder for you. So there we are. What it has in it is a whole heap of the prompt markdown files. Let me talk about the structure. First of all, it's hierarchical. So every folder below it inherits the defaults from the folder above it if it doesn't override or specify those parameters. In this case, the very top level in the prompts folder defaults MD is that we're going to use OpenAI GPT 5.4. You can use OpenAI, Anthropic, Google, OpenRouter, and I'm sure there's more to come. But this is what will be used as the default system instruction and the default models unless you do something else. Now in HelloMD, the Hello World example, we give it an ID of its own name, hello, and this context inputs. They're done by argument name and app context. And at runtime, when we convert this prompt file into a body that we send to the agents, what we're looking at there is wherever we put the curly brackets and that name, that gets replaced at runtime after validation, and we'll see that soon. So the prompt files have the front matter, which have the values for the models that we specifically want for this prompt. Otherwise, it inherits from above. We can also we can compose these files together. So in this case, what it's going to do is it's going to insert the shared tone MD. What's that look like? Well, it's the same structure. Again, what gets included is this system instruction. So that's going to override the default one and get appended to the system instruction that we have here. So if you include them, you'll get the default brand and tone instructions and legal safeguards that you want, and also this prompt-specific system instructions appended together after we've replaced the input context with the data that we pass in at runtime. And that's the way these prompts sort of work. Now, let's make a new one of our own. Now, I'm not going to make you watch me type these. I have one here, which its intention is to summarize a pull request. Summarize. Again, these are straight markdown files during development environment. And what we're going to do there is have a good look at it. What we have is summarize pull request. It's going to override the dev environment. It's going to sort of say in development, let's go a little bit cheaper. Let's go GPT 5.4 mini, a bit cheaper, a bit faster, makes the builds faster and so forth during CI, during our unit tests. So that's probably a good environment override, and we'll see that working in a second. but it takes a different input. In this case, it takes the request body. Now, one thing I always had to do was, before injecting the data into the prompt by gluing it together, is I needed to validate it. So in this case, you can include the validations in the prompt definition. Maximum size, 8,000 bytes. Allow regex, any sort of normal string, so no special characters. Deny regex. Yours will be better than this, but this is just for an example. If the word secret, API underscore or dash or key or password exists anywhere in the pull request body that we're passing in, because it could come from a user, it's going to not call the OpenAI. It's going to return a fixed message, a secret was detected. You've got two choices. You can have it return a message, or you can have it return an exception and catch it in a try catch and do what you need to do. But this sort of means that the validation for that input is with the prompt where it's defined. And in this case, a different system instruction, you're a code review assistant, summarize pull requests, and the prompt template, which is the user message that gets sent, is summarize the following pull request, and we inject in the pull request body. And we can also have a third type in these prompt definitions, notes. These are your developer notes. What I found is I forgot why I was repeating myself so many times to get a certain output, or that there was, I wanted to explain what the goal of this prompt was. These don't get included at runtime. They don't get sent to the vendor. They're for your team and for you to have a bit of a scratch pad of space to store the reasons why. Now, how do we use these prompt files? How do we pass them to OpenAI? Well, you've got a couple of options there. Now, one thing that we want to do first is make sure that this has a chance of working. So there's a couple of other CLI commands you can run, include in your build process or your CLI process. npx PromptOpsKit validate. This is a good one to have as part of your unit tests, your CI framework. What it does is it goes through and it checks that all of the inputs were included, that it's structured correctly, that it has the right prompt and system instructions, and nothing is empty, and it gives you errors and warnings. Now, secondly, you wouldn't want to pass these markdowns at runtime. You would incur a performance problem. So you don't have to. You can compile them into either a JSON file, which can be deployed, or an ESM module, so you can import and require the prompt template and deploy that to production. So say you're running on AWS Lambda, you don't want to deploy files and get access and do file path sort of manipulation in there. You can compile to ESX and just import and include them in. Let me sort of show you how that works. npx PromptOpsKit compile. In this case, I'm just going to compile them to JSON, and let me show you what that looks like. You get a generated prompts folder, and inside there, what you'll sort of see is the Markdown file has been converted into a JSON structure that's much more efficient to access at runtime. Now, remember I sort of said at the moment we're just on a straight old plain create next app. Let's go and replace this with our code. And again, I'm not going to watch you make me type. I'm going to go and copy one that we have here, come across, and now overwrite the default Next.js file there with our new code. Now let's have a look at what it does here. So when we go to summarize pull request, this is the page that we're sort of adding. First thing it does, and there's two ways of doing this, is you can either specify the exact adapter that you want to use to format the prompt in the body structure that OpenAI represents, or you can use the generic version and pass OpenAI in as a string. That might be great if you've got some calls that are using, that you might want to change models in the future and swap between Claude and OpenAI. You wouldn't want to use an exact adapter. In this case, for this example, I'm just fixing it to OpenAI format. You pass in the ID of the prompt that you want to use, and then you pass in these set of runtime render options. And in this case, we're going to pass in the environment string that we have, whether we're development or production, and we're going to settle our inputs. We're going to pass in a pull request body, which for this example is a hard-coded fake GitHub pull request, but you would grab that from GitHub using their API and pass it in. Remember, when we pass this in, it's going to be validated at that time. Now, because we had the validation of doesn't contain the word secret and so forth, what we can do here is we can check to see if we got a return message. And if we did, we can short circuit the function and just return the string that we got from the validator. Again, that's your choice. You can put a try catch around the whole render prompt and catch the validation exception type and then do whatever you need to do from that. But from there, all we do is pass it as the body to whatever vendor we want to pass it to. In this case, I'd have just instantiated a new instance of the OpenAI using my OpenAI key and then return the message content. All right, let's have a look at how it works. So you'll see now that the basic Next.js app is gone. It's been replaced by our pull request summarizer. You can paste it into here. When I hit run prompt, what we're going to see is it's going to go out and execute the prompt that we had. And how did it do that? Well, it started off with the prompt markdown that we had. And remember, we compiled it to JSON. And what the system's smart enough to know that it will use the compiled JSON version unless there is a markdown prompt version of the same name and it's later. So this allows you to develop using the markdowns, but deploy your compiled versions into prod. So it's a very seamless developer experience. So we take that compiled JSON format. Now at runtime, when we have the pull request that we want to summarize, we resolve the body that we need. And this is the body that OpenAI likes. And you'll sort of see here, it's got the model resolved because we said we were running in production up here. You'll sort of see it used the version 5.4. It put the right system instruction, blending the two that we have. You're a code review assistant, summarize concisely. It then put the user message, summarize the following pull request, validated the input, and then put the input in. We sent that to OpenAI. OpenAI come back with its magic. Voila, we have our value. Now, what happens if I change and execute this in dev? Remember, we had the dev model override in there. You'll sort of see now that it uses GPT 5.4 mini, saving us some money. What happens if I put the word secret somewhere in here? You sort of see that it doesn't run. It returns the hard-coded message, a secret was detected. So we get to do all that sort of work. So the flow for the development pipeline is you install PromptOpsKit, you initialize it in your project, which just creates that prompts folder. You create your prompt definitions and iterate on it. You add this line of code to render the prompt wherever you want to convert those prompts, compiled or markdown, into the right body structure for the vendor that you want to use. You do that. You manage your validation errors and you pass it off into the LLM vendor of your choice. To deploy to production for efficiency, you compile them, you can validate them in your CI, and away you go. Now, the only other thing I want to sort of mention is that we also can insert the skills for this, so you don't have to code it alone. If you do npx PromptOpsKit skill, we'll produce all of the skill files in a way which you can sort of like them. Oh, misspelt. npx PromptOpsKit skill. Talking about blowing the moment, Troy. So there you go. So in that case, what we do is we sort of merge with your current agent files, our own section, and we do that for Cursor. We do it for Copilot. We do it for Codex. We do it for Claude. And I think any of the others like OpenCode and so forth use the agents markdown file. So that's about all I want to sort of show for the moment. The resource, of course, is the repository. I'd love you to fork it and like it and contribute and become a contributor. And we also have PromptOpKit.com, and there it's sort of deeply, Codex and I went through and we tried to document anything that we think you're going to need. So with that, thank you. Please consider using it if you're in prompt hell like I was,